The supermarket checkout matrix is turning people into full-fledged robots. There's a couple examples that I would like to share with you, and let this be a warning to you all. I'm only going to share a few examples and then get off this, and then return to what is a historic period in time for me to be sitting down consecutively without talking, taking in the energy of the sun, perceiving my body or vessel to be a battery that is capable of taking a higher charge than what we perceive. So, yesterday, I'm at Kroger and I'm going through the self-checkout, and the self-checkout machine freezes. And I get frustrated, but not angry with the staff member, but frustrated with the machine and frustrated with humans being okay with, the machines breaking down, glitching out, whether it's caused by hackers, incompetent software programming, which is the case in some cases, unknown glitches, or space weather, which we discuss on this channel in unique ways that no other YouTuber, including Suspicious Observers. He doesn't even go the level that I go in the speculations as to how we're affected by the sun. Okay? And so just discussing the potential of the grid going out is not the only thing to discuss. But on that note, this is related to that. You see, because in this modern QR code, acting like we have an implantable microchip when we don't even have an implantable microchip, but acting as if we are implanted by microchips with all the mind control programming on the algorithms for those of the various left or right flavors. They even control you down to your zip code and the demographics in particular zip codes. That's how nefarious this whole system is. So when you go through a system like that, where the machines are breaking down, and it's expected of us to wait for the machine to come back, 1 minute goes by, 2 minutes go by. And at this point, I'm beginning to pace. It isn't so much the waiting, so it's now come down to this in 2024, that I'm expected to just sit here like a good little slave, hoping that this thing comes back. 3 minutes go by. Thing still hasn't come back. 4 minutes go by. And I'm beginning to pace back and forth like a friggin' wolf trapped in a cage. And I'm beginning to ask for the manager and the manager's manager and all the way up. Like, who's the Archon in control of this stuff? And then boom, my change gets spits. And then she's apologizing because it's in quarters. It's great it's in quarters. I can get some water that's filtered with that. Of course, probably not going to keep out the forever chemicals. Now, earlier that day, I go to get my coffee, where I normally get my coffee. And I'm paying with cash more because I'm limited on income. When you pay with cash, you're aware of how much crap you're buying at McDonald's, which I think supports Israel. So I try to remind myself that and not go to McDonald's anymore. Anyway, so I'm getting my coffee, and it's $2 and some change for the large coffee that I get. And guys like, $2 some odd change. And so instead of paying for it with the card, I'm paying for cash. And he's literally taking the money out of my hands, like, $2.85. Like, dude, don't touch my hands. I didn't say that, but I looked up at him. Same guy that I gave my YouTube channel to. I have a special YouTube channel set up for locals, and I've given 14 people my channel, where I basically mirror my same content and try to make friends and start a prepper meetup group in my locale. And people are like, no bueno. Unless you show yourself as popular with lots of comments and views, right? They're not interested in someone that's not popular. So people are still thinking with their slave brain. Anyways, this person I try to reach out to and go, are you into conspiracies or certain truths? They go, yeah. They definitely got that, yeah, duh. Yeah, I'm so hip, but yet you're not. And so it's like people aren't used to authentic tamales, if you will, or authentic human beings that aren't robots going, I am a real true speaker who's not a celebrity, who's real flesh and blood, who's willing to start a real meetup, where we have coffee, where we break bread. These are B vitamins. I'm trying to reduce my coffee. When you drink lots of coffee, it's bad for your mental health. and it increases anxiety. So I'm trying to reduce this gas station non-filtered. They're probably not filtering that water I'm drinking daily too. And I'm all about being healthy. So I'm going through everything that I take into my body, and I'm going, these things need to change. I need to spend more time exercising, like cardio too, and walking in my immediate environment. I don't need to take a road trip. I could take a road trip to the park and walk around the park all day long and make videos all day long. But I still am going to take a road trip at some point, and it's going to be fantastic, but it won't be rushed, and it probably won't be done with absolute strangers. So, I'm just thinking about this whole, and I want to get to my next example, which is Walmart. So here we have Kroger, a place that I have history, by the way. It's not Kroger's fault. I take responsibility. But looking back at my youth, working at Kroger, handling all that hormone milk, working around other drug addicts that were experimenting with things that were working in my space before I began to experiment, I know that these environments are not healthy places. It's not healthy food. These grocery stores are not healthy on the staff, and the staff tend to have mental illnesses that are undiagnosed because they keep working, so they end up with problems and addictions, either sex, drug, or entertainment, or video game. Some form of escapism. It could be as simple as fast food and soda, which, by the way, can influence auto accidents. Something as simple as getting unnecessary food and snacks when you don't need that food and snacks. Some of us, we just get in the habit of just going out on a regular basis because we live in this modern day and age in which the oil is still running, is still pumping, and is still, comparatively so, cheap as friggin' hell. Not saying I'm against it, not saying I'm for it. I'm saying that in this reality where we don't have to work hard like our ancestors for our food, and we don't have to hunt, we're all living on this bubble until, of course, the time comes where that bubble pops, or we deal with the solar flash or the EMP, which isn't the main focus of our talk today, but it is related to that we are not ready for what's coming in this modern supermarket auto checkout reality. Now, having said that and told you about, so I try to avoid the people and go to the checkout, and Gypsy Fox talks about the same thing, and dealing with, in some cases where he's at in California, a lot of immigrant Muslim people working the door, which makes him and other people feel uncomfortable because they're from somewhere else and they're checking his receipt, and he doesn't want to show them his receipt, and he's perceiving from his side of the fence, and he has a right to do so, these people are being brought in to rule over us or something. And while I view aspects of that attitude or psychology as a little bit offensive, having relocated from one part of the U.S. to another more oppressive part of the U.S., from more freedom to less freedom, I have seen it with my own eyes. This placement of certain immigrants into certain positions of authority. It could be running a hotel, it could be running this, it could be running that, but I have seen it with my own eyes. So you can defend people, you can defend Jews, and you should. You can defend Arabs, white people, and blacks from oppression, as you should, but that's not the same thing as saying that that group is without sin or without programming. All these friggin' groups are full of programming. And so a lot of immigrants, they come in. It's good to respect America and like America, but there is the aspect of the AmeriCult, spelled with 3 Ks instead of 1 C. You need to understand that. And so there is this promotion of worshiping the AmeriCult and forgetting about the Bill of Rights, U.S. Constitution, and the values of Christ, or the principles of Christ that allegedly this country was founded upon. So there is a value system of Americana that is promoted to immigrants, but it isn't necessarily the Bill of Rights, Constitution. It isn't really the history of the founding fathers. It isn't really the truth about 9/11. And immigrants from Middle Eastern countries should be the first to have an interest in the truth about that. And they're the first to go, don't talk to me about that in my experience. You knew this, right? No, seriously, you knew this, right? That group is not a part of our movement, nor racially those folks. But of course you have an exception. You have an exception to the rule. But yeah, that exception to the rule at present is unnecessarily overlooked by those people. Those people should care about people. What they call it, speaking in their favor. I would just say speaking the truth and not getting involved in this left versus right, us versus them, and just looking at the devil of this world, the shaitan of this world that is running things. Let's bring it back to home center and not go on and on for today's video. So we have an evil system that has brought us onto the web and cell phones right around the same time they brought us the 9/11 event, as we talked about in a recent video. It's going to be a shorty. So they've got us on this control grid, and even though we don't have the microchips yet, we've got the cell phones. This is a rock, amethyst. But we've got these cell phones now that people are locked into that are guiding them, that are their new directions, their new masters, their new gods, their new spiritual advisors, in truth. The AI, and then the AI will actually lead you in some cases to the wrong websites. And then when you try to call out AI on it and be like, why did you guide me to these websites that ripped me off or something? It'll be like, I didn't do that. Or you'll be like asking AI, like, why were you not working yesterday? I was working just fine. You're the one who's not working. And so it'll argue with you. It'll gaslight you, basically. This AI master that's being rolled out. So let's bring it back down to home. You know as well as I do that whether it's the EMP or a hack or a solar event or something else, or a supernova caused by the sun or something else, or something causing the sun to go into a mini supernova that causes electronics to fail, there would be cannibalism and rape and human trafficking because people aren't prepared with the necessary food and water. Even though we warned them for years and years that they have to get prepared, they find this to be a joke. And even recently in exchange on Twitter, somebody was mocking me when he was mocking anybody that perceived that the sun influenced either weather or human behaviors. That, to some of them, is on par with the perception that the earth is flat, and that's crazy. The perception that the earth is flat, which some people have, is not on par with the science of how we are affected by the sun. In fact, many flat earthers, if it's changed for you, feel free to let me know. But in my relationship and dealings with flat earthers, they're anti this knowledge of how we're influenced by the sun or how the elite New World Order influence world events. Even though that's conspiratorial, they rather believe in the garbly goo of the flat earth, which has no spiritual gnosis. It goes nowhere. The Truman Show goes somewhere in its plot when he's trying to find out what is this reality and is questioning the master or the archon or the ruler as he tries to exit the cage. There is gnosis in Truman Show. There is not gnosis in flat earth. Bring it back home. There is gnosis and truth and spirituality and people realizing that we need to return to our human roots. And that this machine that people are becoming slaves to is inherently an anti-human, racist machine that is turning the different perceptions or demographics of humans against each other. And so these should be warning signs. The manipulations of politics through machines, Cambridge Analytica, the TikTok situation, and the U.S. counterparts, not that they're more innocent, Facebook, Twitter, what Musk is doing. These things should be waking up mainstream conspiracy theorists and then your average what's called normies or sheeple. Not that I use the term sheeple too much, because many mainstream conspiracy theorists are sheeple in their own right, that they themselves are blind to see due to their arrogance. And a lot of them point the finger and say, 99% of humanity is evil, but I'm the 1% that's good, while they engage in either cursed energy or others. Like too many American-based, regardless of ethnicity, conspiracy theorists think that their shit doesn't stink. And they're not open to true feedback on how they themselves are sometimes emitting New World Order garbly-goo vocabulary and consciousness and attitudes. So we need to be very clear in our enunciation and vocabulary and not make excuses for stupidity when we're living in a world of education, higher education, right? People have access to higher education every day on the internet, to what are the real teachings of Christ, as opposed to what the churches are teaching. And if people want to choose to live in ignorance, that's on them. So let me give you the next example. I'm at Walmart early in the morning, and I can only see the self-checkout open on one lane, and it's a special lane open for people that order with their cards, cell phone cards, or with their cell phone accounts, with their online Walmart accounts, with their cell phone, basically. And instead of this person saying, well, you can't go through this line because you're not ordering with your cell phone, but you can go through this line, I had to walk back and forth for 20 minutes and figure out myself, because this person doing the self-checkout is falling asleep and doesn't have the common sense to go, well, you can't go here, but you can go here. I had to figure it out on my own, okay? And that same Walmart has a massive security that is profiling me and the people when we come in. They just drive back and forth, and I don't know what's going on at Walmart headquarters, but it's like they've sent out this memo to have massive security at Walmarts around the time of the eclipse, okay, or to crank up security. This could be just in response to some decision, but somebody made a decision somewhere to crank up security or to change things up at Walmarts. So Walmart is a strange place to work for those that don't know. And a lot of the people there and at Kroger are sick. And I told you that I did have a bout with drug addiction in the past. And that was something, not to blame them, but just to know that it wasn't just the G-Man's influence in my life, Gunner. It was working for Fred Meyer, aka Kroger, and not being and hanging around the A-Man, who was great to me on a level, but didn't have the necessary, no offense to him, he's my friend to this day, via letters. He didn't have the necessary spiritual insight to warn me about the influence of the G-Man and others, although he tried. He tried. He just didn't have the same spiritual interest that I happen to have today to guide me, nor knowledge of the solar flares. Okay. And again, it could be the solar flares that eradicate this grid system, which, as we get into in other videos, we may be manipulated by them, these alien, jinn, demonic forces, through technology, through the cell phones. So even if we're going to face a traumatic future, if the grid is interrupted, that is not actually the end of the world, but the liberation. So it's very revealing when a lot of New Agers are very protective of the grid itself and see the grid as necessary. When their money, in some cases, our current economic system comes from the Federal Reserve, New Agers, and there's many that aren't admitting to being New Agers when they are straight up using New Age language, right? You will identify them by the language that they use, which is not used by other historical ancient religions. So there's many that say that they're not New Age. When you listen to the very psychology, what they're saying, right? And it is New Age, right? You will know them by what they're promoting and what they're not calling out. Right? There's nothing light or high vibration about allowing men of darkness that control the red buttons to get away with marginalizing people. That's not of the light. And when we pass over to the other side, the true creator is going to frown upon people that were in bed with darkness. Okay. Now, at Kroger, at the self-checkout, I want to find a close here. I was just noticing how the person working the counter had to guide people in, kind of like an airport situation. Keep moving, because the people, they go to sleep once they enter into the self-checkout line. And because they have to wait for a minute, they go into a sleep mode where they have to be guided forward. And it's the same thing with traffic. I'm noticing people driving below the speed limit, but driving in some cases way above the speed limit right here outside, where I hang my hat, so to speak. Sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, people with those demon-possessed Dodge Chargers doing 70 miles an hour when they should be driving 10 miles an hour. You see where I'm going with this? Meanwhile, you deal with the regular people on the road, they're doing 20, they're doing 30 when they should be doing 40 and 50. You understand what I'm saying? And there were some days in which I did go pedal to the metal and go 70 and 80 in an environment, in a time and space to where it felt appropriate to do that, and alien to go 20, 25, but that's what the herd's doing. They're going slow. They're thinking slowly. They're processing slowly. They don't understand anything that I say about the sun, about China, Russia, EMP, our grid being hacked into, unless it's the mainstream media, whether it's here or the people running the Portland Reddit page. Unless it's the mainstream media, your ass will be grass, will be censored if you have a non-mainstream media, non-partisan perspective on the things going down. I said for years, especially recently, the left wing and aspects of it and journalism of it, whether it be mainstream or moderate or alternative or anarchist, they are conspiracy theory, martial law is coming, new world order to the max, for those of you that didn't know that. They just don't use that language that we use. You see what I'm saying? And they don't see Trump as the savior, whereas conspiracy theorists have been programmed to see him as a living, breathing Messiah, not just a regular human being, but a Messiah. And that's where that great awakening code language comes from. It comes from QAnon, which I've been exposing for 8 years. See, some of you just met me in the last year or so. You don't know that I have a long history. Look at the old videos of exposing fake conspiracy trash that's not of the light. That's who I am. You understand what I'm saying? That's why some of you are never going to like me. You're immediately going to go, fuck this dude. This dude ain't shit, because I'm not drinking Kool-Aid. Some of you, you think you're looking for the truth. You've never even come across it once. Not if you think all the men got to get behind each other and back each other so they all go over the cliff like a herd of elk. No, man. I'm not going over this cliff with that guy or the next guy. I'm my own guy. And conscious women should respect the man who's his own man, who doesn't follow other men. Women today are not the traditional sacred feminine that they were in the past. And it has to do with this: you must follow our leader, archetypal thing. That's the main thing that it revolves around. If you're not, this is with the Democrats and Republicans. And there is no real difference when you date them between conspiracy or paranormal aware women and normie women. In fact, your odds are going to be better with normie women. Because once you deal with those conspiracy women that go down the rabbit hole of the aliens and paranormal, they're already going to be tainted by other men in the alpha male paradigm, in which they seek to follow the advice and teachings and belief systems of that man that appears to be alpha. And on the physical plane of reality, that's the Alex Joneses of the world, the Tony Sawyers, this, that, and the other, those that are presenting themselves as savior type folks. And so people like me can come along and say, wait a minute, there's false teachings in what they say. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. And unfortunately, those conspiracy women that I would hope to be spiritual, psychic, and aware don't see the light that I'm emitting from my heart space. Shine the light on the wickedness of the many men that they have been conditioned via the archons to trust. Am I making myself clear? I hope so, because we don't want to have unnecessary confusion regarding this topic. And then, of course, I can become conditioned by that person doing that. Everybody come in. We've got multiple computers open. People, wake up. And I start doing that zombie dance walking forward. And she's like, I'm sorry, we don't have an extra, so I have to go back. And then there's the awkwardness of someone apologizing when I'm thinking to myself, why are you apologizing? Just don't even be programmed to be submissive to me. I'm not going to say, you have to call me sir or ma'am or any of that. But when you're called a ma'am by an African American woman who's not awake in the head, and there's a lot of that, there's spiritual people, right? There's spiritual women that I sense. And then there's like this zombie thing that's going on with all the different races, as I said. And you can pick up on spiritual people when you look at them or when you walk by them on the street, but that's not going to stop some of them, especially if they're psychic, from fearing you. If they feel your vibrations, if they feel your thoughts, they may just treat that person as a witch or as someone that's demonic, because people fear energies and intelligences that they don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we were to just talk about the supermarket asylum, we would be here all day, but this is something that I've talked about for years, and I do have a video out there that you can find probably on my Daily Motion called Supermarket Asylum. I recommend that you check it out. And in that video, I've got Daft Punk Round and Round, the song in the background, so I got it pulled off YouTube. But I'm basically juggling GMO food and talking about the supermarket asylum. But now we're taking it to the next level in this video. With the QR codes in Kroger trying to program us to have our cell phone where we are at all times, and, which I refuse to do the digital deals, we're being programmed for this cell phone self-checkout reality. And so while Gypsy Fox talks about avoiding the real people, which I do to avoid those awkward exchanges. Gave you an example today where somebody was in a way ordering to me to give him my money fast. And when I didn't give him fast enough, it seemed like he took the money out of my hands, out of my wad of cash, which was not an exchange of energy that I wanted. Not from a guy who's going to be a dipshit to me after I gave him my YouTube channel, the one I made for locals, and then act like he doesn't remember me. Or maybe he watched it and developed a bias against me. I don't know. But this whole, regardless of ethnicity, I'm a retard. Not because they took a jabby jab, but because of the energies of this environment. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not the jabby jab. It's the electromagnetic frequencies of this environment and the spiritual warfare that is currently taking place to mankind, and this psychosis from this smartphone addiction. Okay? That's what's going on. And so it was at that same grocery store that I met that author that wrote that book about these apocalyptic potentials from a fiction standpoint. And I am considering reaching out to him to do a longer interview if he would like to get to know me on a deeper level. And I'm willing to drive out to him and get to know him on a deeper level and bring to you his perspectives. on what's coming. So you don't just hear what I have to say, you hear someone else who's written multiple books, who's thought about this for multiple years, who is a Christian, but he's outside the box of what we would consider to be orthodox. So in many ways, we are already conditioned to take the chip through our face recognition, through the QR codes. It's really a combination of all these things. And it's really a combination of all these things that has entered us into their transhumanistic reality. So where even though we don't have a microchip now, we're acting as if we do. And I'm gonna mention a few things for anybody that might be a new viewer. Old viewers have heard this from me a million times. Sorry to bring it up again. I did interview someone in 2007 that did predict that China would bring the microchip. We have since seen, and in a future video, we'll read some documentation. Because as we approach 2030 and 2035, what are we seeing? AI replacing jobs. And as I said in a video that is yet to be edited and shown to you, that was recorded the other day, there's going to be a lot of people fishing one day for food. When people lose their money and their bank cards don't work and the water isn't pumping and the toilets aren't flushing, there's going to be a lot of people fishing at once and hunting simply to survive. We're going to be continuing to discuss preparedness on this channel and discussing equipment that I have found to be worthwhile, and also reviewing past equipment that I've bought in the past that I would recommend against. So for now, the Eco River is something that so far, and I'm still testing it out, is something that I recommend. Not the Eco River 2, but the standard one for $200 on Amazon, along with a water barrel of 55 gallons capacity, along with solar panels and other things.